I'm still at the hospital, Linda, Michael replied, trying to keep his frustration in check. The doctors say another week at least. There was another awkward pause before Linda responded. Oh, well, let me know if you need anything. Maybe I can bring you some clothes tomorrow. Her tone was detached, as if she were calling a distant acquaintance, not her husband of 15 years. Yeah, Michael said softly. I'll need my wallet and a few things from the house. And I'd like to see Amy. Has she asked about me? There was a rustling on the other end of the line. Amy's busy with school and cheer practice, Linda answered briskly. She's got a big competition coming up. Michael gripped the phone tighter, his bandaged hands trembling slightly. Tell her I'm asking for her, will you? And let her know I'm okay. I love her. I'll tell her, Linda replied, her voice flat. When the call ended, Michael lay staring at the sterile tile ceiling, trying to sort through the maze of emotions swelling inside him. He had survived broken bones and business setbacks, but this, whatever was happening within his own family, felt more wounding than anything he'd endured on the road. Tony placed the envelope on the edge of Michael's hospital bed, glancing around as if expecting Linda to burst through the door at any moment. He looked his brother square in the eyes. You sure you want to know everything? He asked, his voice tight with emotion. Michael nodded, forcing himself not to flinch. I have to. Thank you, Tony, really. Tony hesitated, then squeezed Michael's shoulder reassuringly. You just focus on getting better. I'll handle anything you need on the outside, okay? With a deep breath, Michael ripped open the envelope. Inside were photographs, printouts of text messages, and detailed notes scrawled in Tony's careful handwriting. There was no mistaking Linda in the pictures, dressed to impress, meeting a well-groomed man outside a trendy restaurant in downtown St. Louis, laughter lighting up her face in the way Michael hadn't seen in years. The text messages were even more damning, filled with things he couldn't unsee, whispers of plans for weekends away, complaints about Michael's old-fashioned ways, and jokes about her freedom while he was in the hospital. Michael's hands trembled as he read, but the truth, cold and absolute, drove away any lingering hopes. He lay back, the ceiling spinning above him. Tony sat quietly nearby, obviously holding back his own anger. When Michael finally spoke, his voice was hoarse but determined. I won't let them walk all over me, Tony. This ends now. And that means, Michael finished grimly, she's been parking it outside Derek's apartment, the jewelry store, and that attorney's office, all in a vehicle legally tied to my business. His jaw tightened with resolve. If things get ugly, I can prove she wasn't acting in the interest of the company. That matters in court. Tony nodded, impressed by his brother's sharp thinking, even through pain. She probably never even considered that. Most people wouldn't. Michael's mind was already spinning with plans, fallback routes, and contingencies, the same skills that had made Garrett Logistics thrive for over 2 decades. We document everything, every trip, every stop, every date and time. She wants a fight, she'll get one. He looked Tony in the eye and managed a thin, determined smile. Nobody takes what I've built without a fight, Tony. Not her, not Derek, not anyone. For the first time in days, Michael felt a surge of energy cut through the fog of painkillers and betrayal. Linda thought she was leaving him powerless, but she had no idea who she was really up against. This was his life, his family, and his future. And he was prepared to defend it, no matter how many battles it would take. The front lawn was perfectly trimmed, the porch light burned steadily even in daylight, and yet everything felt hollow, as if a shell of his former life remained, emptied of warmth. He unlocked the door and stepped inside, greeted by silence thick as fog. No welcome home sign, no hurried footsteps, just the faint smell of Linda's perfume lingering in the hallway. His chest tightened, but he kept his focus, listening for any sounds that might betray their presence. The house was empty. Michael moved efficiently through each room, noting subtle changes. Framed photographs missing from the living room, a half-empty closet where Linda's clothes had hung, Amy's usually cluttered space eerily bare. In the kitchen, a note sat on the counter beneath the magnet that read family. Linda's neat handwriting was unmistakable. "Michael, we're staying at Mom's. Don't contact us. I'll have the lawyer reach out to you. L." He stared at the note for a moment, then crumpled it and tossed it in the trash with the hospital discharge sheet. In that silent kitchen, with the autumn wind rattling the window, Michael felt something deep within him shift and ignite. If Linda and Amy wanted a fight, they'd chosen the wrong man to cross. He straightened his shoulders, squared his jaw, and began planning his next move. A storm was indeed coming, and Michael Garrett was ready. With every step, Michael felt a mixture of pain and grim satisfaction. He gathered the stray business papers, careful to photograph anything already altered by Linda, and then locked the most sensitive documents in a fireproof safe she didn't know about. Let her hand over photocopies. By the time any lawyer tried to follow the money, everything she and Derek thought they understood would be out of reach. He moved quietly around the house, collecting anything that belonged to him: old photographs, a favorite pocket knife, the watch his father had given him at graduation. As he packed, Michael kept his phone nearby, waiting for calls or texts from Tony and Maria Santos, the detective. In the garage, he discovered one more insult. Linda had boxed up his trophies from trucking conventions, leaving them stacked haphazardly near the recycling bin as if they were worthless. Michael smiled thinly, placing the cardboard box in the trunk of his rental car. Each item was a reminder of the years he'd spent building a future for a family who now saw him as disposable. By sundown, the house was as empty as Michael's former trust, yet unlike the latter, he knew it could be rebuilt. As he locked the front door, catching one last whiff of unfamiliar cologne, Michael set his jaw and promised himself. They may have erased him from the past, but he would write the future. His next move would be decisive, and he was determined to reclaim everything that mattered, on his terms this time. Now, it was their turn to feel vulnerable, to scramble and doubt themselves. The tables had turned, and Michael had control over his own fate again. For the first time since the accident, he felt a sense of peace settle over him, a quiet certainty that he could weather whatever storms came next. He carried his box of rescued trophies and personal effects up to his suite, and Rex greeted him with a grateful wag of his tail. Michael knelt down, ruffling the golden retriever's ears. "You and me, boy," he whispered. "We're starting over." That night, as city lights flickered outside his window and the hum of traffic was muted by thick hotel walls, Michael began writing a checklist for the next phase. There would be more battles ahead, custody arrangements, legal maneuvering, settlement negotiations, but he no longer feared what was to come. He had reclaimed his dignity, his assets, and his sense of purpose. Most importantly, he had reminded Linda, Amy, and Derek that the man they thought was broken was just getting started. It was clear now he was up against something infinitely more dangerous. Michael leaned back in the booth, his knuckles white around the coffee mug. "Thank you, Maria, that changes everything." Maria nodded, her eyes sharp and unwavering. "I've already started documenting everything. If Derek makes any moves, or if he tries to hire someone, I'll know, and I'll go to the police the second I have proof." Michael exhaled slowly, feeling the steady burn of determination in his gut. "Good. Keep watching him. If he tries anything, I want to be ready. And Maria, be careful. I don't want anyone getting hurt on my account." She smiled, a fierce glint in her eyes. "Don't worry about me, Michael. I can take care of myself. But you need to watch your back. And don't go anywhere without letting someone know where you are. Promise me that." "I promise." Michael's voice was calm, but the gravity of the situation settled over him like a heavy cloak. As he left the diner, dusk settling over St. Louis, Michael's thoughts raced. Linda had chosen her side, but she'd also chosen a man born of desperation and danger. Betrayal had led them all to this precipice, and now, survival would demand more than careful strategy. Michael was no stranger to adversity, but this was a test unlike any before. He wasn't just fighting for his work or reputation anymore, he was fighting for his very life. His potential accomplices were either in jail or too busy running from their own problems to help him. And now, He was working directly for the man he thought he could betray and murder. Michael had woven a web so intricate that Derek wouldn't see the trap until it was too late. The final phase was the most delicate. Michael needed to ensure that Linda and Amy were safe, even if they didn't realize it. He couldn't allow them to be caught in the crossfire of his retaliation. He arranged for a discreet security detail to follow Linda and Amy, ensuring they were protected from any potential threats. He also made sure that Amy's college funds were secured and that she had access to them, regardless of what happened with the divorce. As he finalized his plans, Michael felt a strange sense of calm. He had taken control of the situation, turning the tables on those who had tried to destroy him. He was no longer the helpless victim in a hospital bed. He was the hunter, and he was closing in on his prey. The next step was to execute his plan with precision and ruthlessness. He would show Derek and Linda that betrayal came at a high cost, and that Michael Garrett was not a man to be underestimated. The storm was coming, and he was ready to face it head-on. They moved with purpose and a confidence that spoke of experience, scanning the lot before making their way toward the building. Michael lowered the binoculars and turned to Tony. "Time to see if Derek is as clever as he thinks he is." Tony shifted uneasily. "What do you want them to say to him?" "They'll give him an ultimatum," Michael replied. "Let Derek experience what real consequences feel like. He owes more than money now. He owes time, loyalty, and honesty. Let's see how he handles a little pressure from the kind of people he's been pretending to impress." As the minutes ticked by, the tension in the office was palpable. Down below, Derek finished the tour and stepped into the sunlight, smoothing his suit and rehearsing whatever sales pitch he believed would clinch his big break. When the debt collectors intercepted him, Michael could almost hear the shift in Derek's confidence. The conversation began with polite introductions, but quickly turned as the tone sharpened and the men closed ranks around him. Derek's face blanched, his cocky grin faltering when he realized who these men really represented. Michael watched the exchange, noting how quickly Derek's bravado crumbled. He looked around desperately for any escape, but there was none to be found. Not in a yard full of Michael's people, in a facility owned and operated by Michael's company. "Let's go," Michael said to Tony and Jerry, his voice steady. "We have what we need. Derek Morrison is about to learn the meaning of true accountability." Michael watched through the binoculars as Derek's face turned pale, his eyes darting around wildly. "What do you mean? Arrested?" Derek stammered into the phone. "How could they arrest you?" Linda's voice was shrill, bordering on hysterical. "They said I embezzled funds. They're saying I stole from the company, Derek. I need you to come down to the police station right now. I need you to get me out of here." Derek's hands trembled as he clutched the phone, his eyes scanning the parking lot as if looking for an escape route. I can't. I'm in the middle of something. I'll call you back." He hung up, his breath coming in short, desperate gasps. Michael could almost hear the gears turning in Derek's mind as he tried to process the avalanche of bad news. The debt collectors, the repossession, and now Linda's arrest. It was all too much. "He's breaking," Michael said, a cold satisfaction in his voice. "He can't handle the pressure. He's always been a coward, and now he's realizing the full extent of his mistakes." Tony nodded, his expression grim. "What's next?" Michael's eyes never left Derek through the binoculars. "Next, we let him stew in his own fear for a while. Let him feel the weight of his choices. Then, we'll offer him a way out. On our terms." As Derek stood there, his world crumbling around him, Michael felt a sense of justice. Derek had chosen to betray him, to plot against him, and to believe he could get away with it. Now he was reaping what he had sown, and Michael was just getting started. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. Derek's phone had gone straight to voicemail all morning, and his texts were unanswered. The civil lawsuit for misuse of business funds had left her reeling, and the frozen accounts meant she couldn't even pay for basic necessities. Her lawyer had warned her that the divorce proceedings were going to be a nightmare, and now she was facing the reality of her actions. Linda's mind raced as she tried to piece together what had happened. She'd thought she was being clever, playing the long game to secure her future and Amy's. But now, Everything was unraveling, and she was left with nothing but regret and fear. Her phone buzzed with another text from Michael. "Your boyfriend is learning about consequences. You're next." She stared at the message, her heart pounding. Michael had always been a formidable opponent, but this was different. This was personal, and he was showing no mercy. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. She had to find a way to fix this, to save what was left of her life. But as she sat there, the weight of her mistakes pressing down on her, she knew it was going to be a long, hard battle. It was from Michael. "Enjoying rock bottom yet? Every choice has a consequence. You're both seeing yours now." Linda's grip tightened around her phone, knuckles white. She looked up at Derek, seeing him for what he really was. A frightened man who'd dragged her into a disaster of his own making. All the dreams about a new beginning, the excitement of an affair, the thrill of being desired, gone now, replaced by a cold, gnawing fear of what would come next. "You need to fix this, Derek," she hissed, her composure cracking. "You dragged me into this. You find a way out. I can't go back to Michael, not after everything I did." Her voice shook, her eyes haunted. Derek shook his head miserably. "There's nothing left to fix, Linda. He owns everything. My debts, your accounts, the future we thought we'd have. We have nothing." She slumped back in her chair, numb. For the first time since the affair began, Linda felt the enormity of what she'd lost. That steady, dependable life, the security and respect, her reputation, and most of all, the trust of a man who'd once loved her beyond reason. Michael's simple, cutting text was the last straw. Linda broke down, silent tears streaking her face, while Derek stared blankly at the table, the weight of his defeat crushing him. The war they'd started was over, and they'd never even seen the real battle coming. Each step toward the front door felt like walking into a storm she couldn't outrun. Shadows stretched long across the lawn, and the porch light cast a stark, unwelcoming glow. With Derek shaking at her side, Linda hesitated at the threshold, uncertainty gnawing at her insides. She reached for her key, but found the door already unlocked. That detail alone sent a chill up her spine. Inside, the house was nearly empty, stripped of warmth and familiarity, every echo magnifying their anxiety. The air was tense, charged with the feeling that something inevitable was about to happen. Michael was waiting in the living room, standing with his back to them, looking out the window into the night. He didn't turn when they entered, but spoke in a tone that was calm, measured, and unmistakably final. "You made it," Michael said. "I wasn't sure if you'd have the nerve to show up." Linda swallowed, fear making her voice tremble. "Michael, please, we didn't mean—" He turned, finally facing them. There was no anger in his expression, only a cold resolve that made Derek take a nervous step backward. "Stop. Don't try to spin this, Linda. Not after everything." Michael's gaze was unwavering. "You both thought I was finished, laid up in a hospital bed, easy to push aside. But I told you before, I didn't build my life by being weak. And I'm not letting you destroy it now." A heavy silence filled the room, and the shadows seemed to press in closer as Michael took a slow step forward, the reckoning between them at last unavoidable. "So, you found it in Derek. A man with expensive clothes, a fancy apartment, and a big mouth. He promised you the world, didn't he? A life of luxury, freedom from the mundane, a chance to start over. But you didn't stop to think about the consequences, did you? You didn't consider that actions have repercussions, that choices shape our lives in ways we can't always control." Michael leaned forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "You thought you were being clever, Linda. You thought you could have it all, my money, my business, my life, without any of the responsibility. But you were wrong. You underestimated me, and now you're paying the price." He stood up, towering over her as she sat on the cold floor. "You wanted a divorce, Linda. You wanted to take everything I've built and give it to a man who's nothing but a con artist and a gambler. But you can't have it. Not anymore. Not after what you've done." Michael walked over to the window, looking out into the night. "I've spent the past month dismantling your plans, Linda. I've exposed Derek for the fraud he is. I've protected my business. and I've made sure that you can't touch any of it. You wanted to play games with my life, so I played games with yours. And now, it's time to end this." He turned back to her, his expression unyielding. "You have two choices, Linda. You can walk away now, sign the divorce papers, and disappear from my life forever. Or you can fight me, and I promise you, you will lose everything. Your reputation, your assets, your freedom, it will all be gone, and you'll be left with nothing but the consequences of your actions." Linda looked up at him, her eyes wide with fear and realization. She had gambled, and she had lost, and now she was facing the reckoning. Derek looked at Linda, his eyes wide with fear and betrayal. "Linda, what's going on? What did you do?" Linda shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't do anything, Derek. I swear. I didn't know any of this." Michael watched them both with a cold, detached expression. "It's over, Derek. Your debts are owned by me now. Your assets are seized, your apartment is being evicted, and your BMW is gone. You have nothing left to offer her, and she knows it." Derek's face paled, and he looked from Linda to Michael, desperation in his eyes. "You can't do this. You can't just take everything from me." Michael's voice was steady and unyielding. "I can. And I did. You made the mistake of thinking you could steal from me, that you could use my wife and my daughter to get what you wanted. You were wrong. And now you're going to pay the price." He turned to Linda, his expression softening slightly. "You have a choice, Linda. You can walk away now, sign the divorce papers, and start over. Or you can stay and fight, but know this. I will not stop until I've taken everything from you, just as you tried to take from me." Linda looked at Derek, then back at Michael. She saw the determination in his eyes, the unyielding resolve. She knew in that moment that she had no choice. She had to walk away to save what little she had left. "Okay," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'll sign the papers. I'll leave." Michael nodded, a hint of satisfaction in his eyes. "Good. It's over, Linda. It's finally over." As Linda stood up, her body shaking with sobs, she knew she was leaving behind more than just a marriage. She was leaving behind her dreams, her hopes, and her dignity. But she also knew that she had no other choice. She had played her hand, and she had lost. Now, she had to face the consequences. "You're going to sign over everything, your accounts, your car title, whatever's left of your possessions. You will leave St. Louis and never contact Linda, Amy, or anyone connected to me again. You'll sign a confession about everything you did, the fraud, the gambling, the plot against my life. If you do that, I'll let you go. If you don't..." Michael looked meaningfully at the two debt collectors who stood silently beside the door, arms crossed. Derek's shoulders slumped in defeat, the last of his bravado gone. "I'll do it," Derek whispered, voice trembling. "Just, please, no trouble, I'll leave right away. You won't ever hear from me again." Michael stood and nodded to the collectors. "Get the paperwork, have him sign everything, here and now." As one collector produced a battered briefcase pulling out forms and a battered legal pad, Michael turned to Linda. "That's your boyfriend's exit package. Now it's your turn." Linda pressed a shaking hand to her mouth, tears glistening in her eyes. "What do you want from me, Michael? I have nothing left." Michael's voice was low and steady. "You're going to sign the divorce agreement and relinquish any claim on the business, the property, and future earnings. You'll get enough to start over, but not a penny more than you deserve. You'll admit in writing to providing Derek with confidential business information, and you'll accept a restraining order barring you from contacting me or Amy for at least 2 years. Linda nodded silently, realizing she was lucky to get even that. She'd lost her home, her family, the future she'd imagined, and her own sense of who she was. The room was silent except for the scratch of pens and the shuffling of paperwork. When the final signatures were done, Michael faced them both one last time, his expression unreadable. "You both made your choices," Michael said, voice like steel. "Now live with them." And with that, the price of betrayal was finally paid. "You're free to go, Linda," he said. "The divorce papers are signed, the restraining order is in place, and the business assets are secured. You can start over just like you wanted." Linda looked up at him, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "I don't know what to say, Michael. I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." Michael's expression didn't change. "Sorry doesn't fix what you did, Linda. It doesn't bring back the trust you broke or the time you wasted. But it's done now. You made your choices, and you have to live with them." He stood up, walking over to the window. "You can take the car. It's paid off and the title is in your name. There's enough money in the account to get you started somewhere else. But don't come back, Linda. Don't try to contact Amy or me. Just go and start over." Linda stood up, her body shaking with sobs. "I will, Michael, I promise. I'll go and I'll never bother you again." Michael didn't turn around. "See that you don't. Because if you do, you'll regret it. More than you can imagine." As Linda walked out of the house, the front door closing behind her with a finality that echoed through the empty rooms, Michael stood alone in the living room. The house was silent, the air thick with the weight of what had happened and what was yet to come. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the battles ahead. The divorce would be final soon, and then he could focus on rebuilding his life, his business, and his relationship with Amy. It wouldn't be easy, but Michael Garrett had never been one to back down from a challenge. He'd faced worse than this, and come out stronger, and he would do it again. Her hands shook as she struggled to process the reality spelled out line after line. "It's not fair, Michael. I made mistakes, but I gave you 20 years of my life. You gave me 20 years of your presence, not your partnership," Michael said quietly. "A real marriage is about loyalty and sacrifice, not just sharing a roof and a bank account. You were gone long before you met Derek. All your energy went to everything and everyone but the person who was there for you, who would have moved heaven and earth to protect you." He walked to the fireplace enclosure, picking up a framed photo of the three of them, Amy in pigtails and a gap-toothed grin, grasping Michael's hand tightly. For a moment the anger passed from his face and a deep, weary sadness took its place. "I loved you, Linda," he said softly, voice almost breaking. "But I can't forget what you did. I can't ever trust you again, and I won't let you hurt me, or Amy, or what's left of this family, ever again." He turned to her one final time, resolve settling across his hard features. "Sign the papers, take your things and go. You get a car and a small settlement, enough for a fresh start somewhere far away, but you're out of my life, Linda, for good." Linda's tears fell silently as she bent over the documents, her signature shaky but determined. She looked up only once, her mouth forming the words, "I'm sorry," but the sound never fully left her lips. Michael gathered the envelope, sealed it, and set it on the mantel. The finality of it was like a judge's gavel. He opened the front door without another word, waiting in silence as Linda collected her things and stepped into the darkness. The house on Maple Street was empty now, every echo a reminder of the battle won and the war lost. Michael closed the door gently behind her and let out a breath he felt he'd been holding for months. Outside, October rain tapped at the windows, washing away old memories and promising at last the chance to begin again. Michael opened the door, revealing the cold October night. "It's done, Linda. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them. I can't change that, and I won't. You have 10 minutes to say your goodbyes and gather your things. Then you need to leave and never come back." Linda's shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of her. She looked around the empty house, the echoes of their past life now hollow and mocking. She had gambled everything on a lie, and now she was paying the price. Michael watched her silently, his expression unyielding. He had given her every chance to see the truth, to understand the consequences of her actions. But she had chosen her path, and now she had to walk it. The taxi pulled up outside, its headlights casting long shadows across the lawn. Michael picked up Linda's small suitcase, the only belonging she had left, and carried it to the door. "Your ride is here," he said softly. It's time to go, Linda. Start over, and this time, make better choices. Linda took a deep, shuddering breath and stepped out into the night. The taxi door closed behind her with a finality that echoed through the empty house. Michael stood in the doorway, watching as the car drove away, taking with it the last remnants of the life he had known. As the taillights disappeared into the darkness, Michael closed the door and leaned against it, his eyes closed. The battle was over, the war won, but the victory felt hollow. He had fought for his life, his family, his future, and he had emerged triumphant. But at what cost? He pushed away from the door and walked back into the living room, the silence pressing in around him. The house was empty, the echoes of their past life now a distant memory. But Michael Garrett was still here, still standing, still ready to face whatever challenges the future held. He picked up the framed photo of Amy, her gap-toothed grin and pigtails a reminder of the love that had once filled these walls. He set it carefully on the mantel, a silent promise to the daughter he still hoped to reclaim. Then, with a deep breath, he turned and walked out of the house, ready to face the dawn of a new day and the battles that lay ahead. Every morning, Michael woke up in his new house, smaller than the old one but entirely his own, and felt the satisfaction of a man who'd reclaimed his life from people who tried to steal it. He'd learned that being ruthless wasn't about anger or revenge. It was about respecting yourself enough to demand that others do the same. And some lessons, Michael knew, were worth teaching no matter what they cost. "I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that."